you guys like blue crab? All right, if you do need me to use it, I can. So we're planning this, you guys came up with this idea, which I was like, okay, let's do this, and then they were like, you're gonna do it, and I'm like, crap, okay. But we're gonna do an activity this morning to get you guys up, moving around. But as I was thinking about doing this, I was like, we need to talk about something before we actually get into the activity, okay? So we're here for the second annual, which is like super amazing, Keeping It Real training for mental health awareness. My name is R.E.A.L. I think most of you guys in here already know me, but I do work for Student on Probation as our training. People kind of give me different titles, so like training coordinator, training, I don't know. Well, what is it called? I don't know. Like that. Oh, it's all over here. But, so I came to Keepin, I want to say it's going on now 6 years, and it's been wonderful. And putting this event on, it's something that it is like a true passion, where is mental health a real thing? What would you guys say? Yes. Are there people who say that it's not? Yes. Absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit this morning, just for a short little period, about is there stigma that's associated with mental health? There is. Okay, and we're going to talk about stigma a little bit later also, but just kind of start thinking about what do people say about mental health, okay? But when it comes to mental health stigma, it does put a negative attitude towards people who have mental health challenges. It does lead to discrimination. It's hard for people to talk about their challenges, and it's hard for people to also seek help. So I know everyone in this room has some form of their hand in the pot when it comes to mental health, whether you're a provider, you could be a counselor, you could be at the schools, like wherever it is, you have some hand there when it comes to it. But are there some people who are reluctant to seek help? And you're like, I know you need help, right? Whether it's just that prevention, that early intervention, or actual treatment, okay? But there is stigma that's still associated with mental health, and that's what we're also trying to break, okay? You're going to see that some of this, not the slides exactly, but some of this information, I also train what's called mental health first aid. So there's an adult version, there's also a youth version. Both are excellent. So some of this information comes from there. But then also I got trained at the state level where there's a resiliency training to address mental health. And it actually was derived from the Air Force. And the Air Force found that when you're going to combat, you see a lot, you deal with a lot, so why not be on the preventative side to say, here's some resources, here's information, so if you find yourself with challenges, seek some help, okay? You're going to see a little bit about that as far as like self-care, and we have another little activity which is really kind of like my, I don't know, you'll see the little colored paper that's on your tables. We're going to use that in a second also. But have you guys ever heard of person-first language? It's about putting the person first before the actual diagnosis. So think about, have you ever heard someone say, There's sometimes medication. So that's a lot different than just basic mental health, okay? So you have what's called a continuum, and you have where some people are going to be excelling. We're going to go through that one. You have thrilling, surviving, you have struggling, and then you have people in crisis, which some of you guys have probably dealt with people in crisis before, okay? So a person who's excelling is going to show the characteristics of very cheerful, very joyful, energetic, high performance. So you're like, they're that positive person. They're just like, give me all that energy. You got the thrilling, they're still positive, but they're calm, they're good. They're like chill mode, right? They're good. But you got the surviving, okay? Where they're still worried, nervous, irritable, sad. So you can start seeing that it's going in a different direction. Okay? We've probably all been in the survival mode at least some point in our lives. Okay? Then you're struggling, anxious, depressed, tired, poor performance, can't really sleep, eat, and then you have in crisis, which that is where treatment is necessary, or at least they need someone to help them through that hard time. Okay? So you have very anxious, very low mood, being absent, exhausted. Again, this is where, of course, sleep, but also you can start seeing weight loss. And I don't even, I'm not going to tell you guys what happened, okay? But I've been in crisis before, okay? And it lasted about 48 hours. But it was the worst 48 hours of my life, okay? And in 48 hours, I lost 10 pounds. That's a lot. Is that crisis? Yes. All right, so this here is also the continuum. Can you have a person who has no mental illness but has a positive mental health well-being? I'm going to hope everyone says what? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Alright, or you can have a person with no mental health, but then they have a poor mental well-being. And then you have someone who is on a serious diagnosis where they have mental illness, poor mental health well-being, and then you have a different individual who also have mental illness, but knows how to cope with it. So the top two would be the most ideal. Someone with no mental illness and has great mental health, right? But the other extreme is if someone has mental health illness, how can we get them to learn how to cope with it? How to still be productive? How to still have a happy and healthy life? Okay? So like I said, you guys have that prevention side, you have the early intervention, but also treatment. So everyone in this room may be in different stages or kind of dip in between a few different ones. So like today would be considered which one? You got prevention, early intervention, transportation. What stigma is still associated with mental health? Name a warning sign people often dismiss until it becomes worse. And then you also have identify a coping skill you have used when faced with a challenging time in your life. The good part is they're all the same questions on those lists. Okay? But that's also one of those challenges is they don't want to call. Because then it's like real, right? But then there's other times where someone's like, hey, I have this employee, what do I do? Well, there's this great thing called a number you can call, and it's called PAP, it's through the insurance, and it's like wonderful. And free services. And did you guys know that it even goes to the people who live in your house? It's not just necessarily you who's on the insurance? Okay. There it is. Thank you. All right, so what'd you get? Because you just picked it up before. All right, so which one?
Identify a coping skill you have used when faced with a challenging time in your life. So personally, I typically take a breather and think about situation at hand. And what I typically do is I have a support circle. And so I will probably talk to one of those individuals about the particular issue that I know that are going to listen to me and kind of help me through the situation.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Pass it off to someone else.
Okay.
All right, so do you guys have circles? You're in a circle right now, too. What? Okay, hey. But you have your circle in here, but you also have, typically people have their own circle outside of whether it's work or even in work, like at work, you have your own little circle where you can rely on people to say, hey, I need to close the door, I'm venting, don't hold it against me, because I need to get it off my chest or whatever the situation is, okay? Is that healthy?
Yes.
Absolutely, okay? If it keeps, like every day it becomes an issue, is that a problem though?
Yes.
So it can become an unhealthy situation, not only for that person, but also if you're going to the same person every time, is that going to wear them down also?
Yes.
Yes, so we have to be cautious with that too. All right, lucky 7.
Ready? Begin. Two. Three.
This side's like, yeah, there you go.
Five.
There it is.
Seven.
All right, pause. Both on the ground. You claimed it. Thank you. Where's the other one? Okay, here we go. Oh, I love this one. Okay. So she has what stigma is still associated with mental health?
For me, I feel that it would be more on there's nothing wrong with me. Like, there's nothing going on, I have it under control, and it not really be under control.
Okay. So like more of the denial aspect of it. Okay, very good.
Hi.
Hi.
How is you?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, current position, what do you feel?
So my name is Jasmine. I work at Child Advocate Support Ben. So our CAC really provides wraparound services. So I would say it would be prevention, early intervention, and treatment. Particularly because we deal with children who have been sexually abused, and early on in that disclosure process, we kind of dealing with a whole wide array of emotions. So we would try and provide families with the resources or educate them, provide a lot of psychoeducation on really what's out there for them.
Okay, so part 2, what is your role and where do you fall in that?
Really, honestly, like just support, emotional support for the family.
Okay, what do you do?
I am a bilingual family advocate, and then Clay and I are both also women of court advocates, so we accompany children in court and prepare them for.
Okay. All right, we don't try and steal her from child advocates because she's bilingual, okay? So I know everyone needs it. Yeah, she's like, She's like, Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, lucky 7.
Ready?
we're good, okay? But was I freaking out a little bit inside? I was prepared that if it dropped, I was gonna have to put a mask on, and it's really hard, even as a parent sometimes. They tell you to do what if those things drop? Put it on yourself first, and then you can help the person next to you. But most of us would do what? Help the child or the other person first, and then ourselves. But why would we want to put it on ourselves first? So that you can actually help, okay? And this is where self-care is really important. Do you need to take care of yourself to help others? You do. And it's not just working out or eating right. There's so many different parts to it where they're learning. It's not just those two. Do you need to have a healthy work environment? Do you need to be happy with the people you're working with? Because it will make or break you. Okay? You have the intellectual aspect of it. You have your emotional. What about the environment? Who you choose to hang out with? Where you decide to go in the community? Does that all play a role in your mental health? It does. You have the physical side. You have, and this one I love to talk about, the spiritual. When people hear spiritual, they automatically go to religion. Okay? In order for you to have self-care, you gotta, you have to have the higher power, they gotta be on your side, all that. But spiritual is more than just religion, it's a part of it. But are there people who are not religious? Yes. So it's really, the spiritual side is meditation, having that self-awareness, but also knowing what your purpose is in life. And they call it like your guiding star. So you don't necessarily have to have the religion, it does help. Okay? But it's more than just that. You have the financial side. I'm sure everyone in this room has known someone who's struggled financially. And if you struggle financially, are other parts of your life also affected? Most definitely. Okay. On your table, you guys do have like little fidget toys, and it's on your computer while we pick out some of the other items. And we came across some stickers that we thought were really cool. They're like, I don't even know, like textured ones. And they help with, some people in here said breathing techniques. And it's like just something to help. Sometimes you just need to like rub a little hard, like a hard surface, like to help you out. It tells you when to breathe, when to like hold, when to all, like there's different things that are on your table that also help. Okay? But it's been a pleasure. We're going to take a break. Right? And then clean up, and then come back to the side. We're going to do a wonderful presentation.
journey, PTSD, TBI, ADHD, anxiety, intermittent depression, right? All of the things. So I started going to therapy for myself, and in that process, I learned that I needed to explore other opportunities, and that led to me determining. I realized how mad I was with the stigma in first responder culture to not be okay, and the fear around it. And so that led me into a profession now as a therapist. I'm almost done with my LPCA. I have about 30 hours left out of the 3,000. So now I'm in a profession where I can talk about it all day long until I'm blue in the face and wake up and the next morning I get to talk about it again. And I get to be a part of a huge collaboration across the county and the greater Houston area to try and reduce that stigma that it is okay to not be okay, even if it's you. That's one of the things is it's like, oh, if everybody else is not okay, that's okay, but just as long as that's not me and I'm not that person, right? So thank you all so much for being here. I do want to get an idea. I know we have law enforcement in the room, so, and if you're law enforcement, first responder, fire, EMS, raise your hand for me. Okay, justice partners, courts, district clerks, county clerks, attorneys, raise your hands. Perfect, thank you. Educators, teachers. Woo, thank you for what y'all do, amazing. Anybody else in here that I didn't recognize? Social care workers, mental health professionals, juvenile probation, of course, because you're hosting this, my apologies. Anybody else that I'm leaving out your type of profession? Yes, ma'am.
Juvenile supervision officers.
Pardon?
Supervision officers.
Supervision officers?
Juvenile.
Juvenile supervision. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. I didn't realize there's going to be this many eyeballs in the room looking at me when I told Michelle that I would present. Typically, I have like 30 to 50 people in a room, and even that's overwhelming. So bear with me. We might have a little bit of turbulence on the plane, but we're going to land safely, I promise. So vicarious trauma, right? I think most people have an idea that it's essentially secondhand trauma. So you're not directly exposed to it, but it's an indirect exposure, and maybe you are responding to a call for service where there was a trauma, or you're helping an individual or a client or a patient, and they've been through something traumatic, and you experience a part of that with them through your experience with them, right, like your direct contact with that person. First responder world, especially frontline workers, we can get exposed to that continuously. And it can range from day to day. You might start out, first call of the day, I was evening shift, so we always knew we would hit the ground running. We might start out, very first call was a drowning of a 4-year-old that did not survive. So when I get off that scene 3 hours later, then I have 4 different alarm calls pending. Then there's a fraud report. Then there's a family violence call. Then there's a theft report. Then there's an in-progress disturbance with a weapon call. Then at the end of the day, I go back to the office and I try to recall all the details and the things that I experienced and try and put it neatly into a report that makes sense. Being able to compartmentalize your emotions is, right, it's a necessity. It's a survival response, right? But it can be really difficult because going from something so extreme to the loss of a life, especially a child's life, and then turning around to shift gears and still being professional and empathetic for something that seems like a minor, okay, I'm going to take a fraud report. But I'm angry because this child is gone, and I have a lot of questions, and I'm questioning faith, I'm questioning, was that preventable? I want to place blame, but I also have to be professional, right? So you have this roller coaster of emotions that you constantly have to just pack up, put it away, go to the next call, pack that up, put it away. Then it comes out into a report. Then you go home. You may or may not have social support at home. Who here has family social support? Show of hands. What about social support from friends or community members? Yeah. What about work support? You have people at your jobs that you trust and that you can talk to. That's an amazing thing. Not everybody has that, and some people don't have that in any aspect of their life. So they go home, they isolate, they withdraw, they don't process, they don't verbalize, they stuff it down, right? It depends on what that culture is. And so there can be a buildup, and it can create a lot of complexities towards developing PTSD, right? The post-traumatic response is normal until it begins impacting your daily level of functioning. So if you're continuing to have some of these symptoms that are on there continuously, and it's interrupting your sleep patterns, your daily functioning, your ability to have safe, open communication, interpersonal relationships, then those are things that we need to look at that are starting to become problematic. Continuous exposures to these can eventually change our worldview, right? Like I said, sometimes we start to question our faith, especially in the field that we all work in. We're exposed to a lot of life's hardships. And sometimes we think, God, the world isn't fair, and this isn't right, and why this person, why this man, why this woman, why this baby? Help me make sense of it. And a lot of times there's not sense of it. And that's a hard thing to deal with, right? It's a hard thing to process. And then we also are exposed to life ourselves, right? Because our world is not just the professional world. We are also humans behind whatever uniform or profession you wear or are. And we have to deal with that too. And sometimes the world falls apart in both places at the same time. Anybody been a victim of that? Stuff is going real bad at home and at work all at the same time, and it feels like the world is crashing down on you. Yeah, I know what that feels like. Who here is willing to admit they've experienced burnout? Yes, thank you. Thank you, I'm not the only one. So burnout, I know sometimes people get a little bit confused between compassion fatigue and burnout, but burnout is more like long term, right? We're dreading going to work. We're dreading doing the things. We're having a change in our work performance because we're emotionally, physically, and mentally just tired, and we're drained, regardless of how much sleep you're getting, regardless if you're doing the exercise routine, regardless if you're making lifestyle changes and eating healthy and doing all those things. You are just so exhausted from the role that you're in. So I'll kind of share a little bit of the first time I felt burnout in both aspects of my life. It kind of kicked my butt, which eventually led me to being a counselor, so in a way I'm grateful for it. I woke up one day and just wanted a whole new life because I was burned out at home in my marriage. Because I am still married to a cop that I work with. He's no longer in law enforcement and runs his own business, so we survived it. But I wanted to quit my job at the sheriff's office, go apply at Fulshire Police Department, leave my husband, sell our house, and go back and live in the house with my parents where I grew up, where I felt emotional safety. Because when my husband and I got married, I thought, oh, I'm marrying a cop. He gets it. So when we go deal with all these crazy scenes and trauma, we can talk about it. This is awesome. I don't have to worry about vicariously, traumatizing him because of my experience and he doesn't get it, and then he's going to be so worried about me. Well, when my husband and I got married, he thought, I'm marrying a female cop. This means we don't have to talk about anything because she gets it. She gets the job and she's living it with me, so we don't ever have to talk about it. How well do y'all think our plans worked out? Not well, right? So we also struggled with the roles of us being district partners and being co-workers led into our household, which is okay for a little bit of time, right? Because we both have a lot of resiliency, but eventually we started to disconnect as husband and wife and as partners, and we were just work partners in our home, and that was not an emotionally safe place for either one of us. So we did some work. I went to therapy for me. I was having a lot of symptoms of PTSD. Then we went to marriage counseling together. We worked out our stuff. He
like many men, not all, there are exceptions, gentlemen, I'm not attacking you. Like many men did not realize how unhappy he was because he was not constantly assessing his emotional state the same way that I am, right? A lot of times women, we're more aware and familiar with our emotions. Sometimes we overanalyze them and spin on them, especially for ADHD brains, right? Men typically don't do that. Some do. But what happens is, for a long time I knew I was unhappy and I knew that I was struggling, I knew we were struggling. He didn't, because he wasn't thinking about it. He just was, I come home, I have a wife, we eat food, we hang out, I go to work, right? And I'm married to this woman for the rest of my life, and wasn't scaling his own happiness or the happiness in our marriage. So when we went to counseling, he kind of had to do this worksheet, and this light bulb went off, and I had like my, I was right the whole time moment, when he finally was like, oh, I'm just complacent. Like, I'm just complacent at work, I'm just complacent in our marriage, in my personal life, right? So it's important for us to be able to assess our emotions and regulate them and communicate them in a healthy way, both on and off the job. Does anybody want to give me an example? I guess let me wrap up that story. So I started my application process with Fulshire PD. So my husband and I was burned out. We did not get divorced. We worked it out. We went to counseling. We figured out our life together. We made it work. And we're still going strong. Work-wise, I talked to one lieutenant who was really heavily involved with me through training and as an FTO instructor. And I told him that I was thinking about leaving. He started asking me these questions. Well, what's the opportunity? What are you going to go do? Oh, well, I'm going to start off on patrol. Okay, so you're going to work a tiny part of the county that you already work in. So he keeps asking me these questions, and basically, I was going to leave to go to another agency to do the exact same job that just had 12-hour shifts instead of 10s, and I was maybe going to get to be an FTO. I wasn't going to be like immediately promoted. There's more promotion opportunity in the county, right? So all these things of, is the grass really greener on the other side? Like, what are you running from? You're going to leave all of your, like your retirement system, all your benefits, everything, you're vested. Why would you get up and walk away from that? And at the time, I didn't know. I just knew I was burned out. So I ended up reducing some of my tasks at work. I put a pause on training. I took some other classes, but I took a pause on training as a field training officer, because that can be really stressful. Those of y'all that train people, it can be stressful, right? Yeah, it can be wonderful when you get along, but sometimes there's clashing personalities, and that's a challenge. So I started changing some of my job roles. Eventually I ended up doing like intake work and got off the street for a little bit, which I hated at first, but at a point when I was actively having suicidal ideations, and it was coming out in my line of work by being reckless and endangering myself and not making smart choices with my prefrontal cortex, decision-making, emotional regulation, judgment, those things, and amygdala and hippocampus not working together because I was dysregulated. It was the best thing I ever could have done, because it's part of the reason I'm still standing here today. It did not allow me to place myself in those situations, to get myself hurt. Does anybody want to give an example of what burnout maybe felt like for them? Thank you.
This is always helpful. I just walked in, so I feel like this. Yeah, thank you. I know that I'm overwhelmed or burnt out when I start to have work-related dreams, and they're never fun.
The work-related
Always
dreams.
awful. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you. What, can I ask one more question? What is something that you've done to help counter that? Like when you recognize it, what helps?
I think I have to really lean into the things that bring me joy, and the things that, are the reasons I keep moving. So, time with loved ones, I find that exercise, things like that are helpful, as much as I, don't do exercise as much as I should. I know it's helpful for me. And really focusing on my sleep hygiene and avoiding the things that are keeping me up, the late night scrolling, the sweets too close to bed, things like that.
I think we're cut from the same cloth. Very similar things there. Anybody else want to share about like either symptoms that they experience, thoughts, behaviors when they've experienced burnout? One more? Yes, in the back.
COVID, there was a lot of suicidal assessments, a lot of, y'all know the stats of all the stuff that went up, right? So our first year back, it was hybrid. By January of 2021, I was beyond exhausted because we're also supporting teachers. We're trying to get trainings together, and I have crises with kids and working extra hours for free. Then I got into an accident in February. So I actually got into 2 accidents, February and March 2021. I have traumatic brain trauma. And I remember thinking, I get to go on medical leave. Like, I was so burnt out that the trauma to my brain wasn't even a thing. I was just grateful for a break from work. And so to me, I was like, I can never get past my threshold to that point. So when you bring up the topic of burnout, it's something that I've been very intentional about, one of those, I guess, blessings in disguise, to really go within and pay attention to the subtle signals that your body, your environment is like screaming out to you to do something about, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. High five to the eye, sister. Yes. Anybody else want to share? I don't buy it.
I'll share.
I kind of saw you making eye contact, and then you avoided, and I didn't want to put pressure.
So I work, we work with juveniles on a daily basis. And I noticed that when, like, for me, whenever I start feeling myself getting burned out, like, I kind of shut people out at work.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I feel angry, but I know that people notice around the workplace, because, when we work together, we have to work together as a team.
Right.
Especially with what we deal with on a daily basis. And just our whole personalities make a big difference in the workplace, not only with our staff, but with the kids too. And they see it, they talk about it, like, Miss Pico, like, what's wrong with you? Like, and I feel like it's our attitudes at the workplace that, it shows when we're burnt out. It really shows. The dreading, going to work, and just being there,
Yeah.
So it's hard, especially when you have the same one sitting there and you have to deal with their behaviors. You have to be the person, on top of what we're dealing with. You have to be an example for them to be able to, I guess, push through. So the burnt out really is, it gets to the best of us, especially at that kind of facility.
What helps you?
So, I talk to myself a lot when I'm driving.
Great.
I do, and when I talk to myself and I think about the things that I work with, or, the problems, it helps me, I feel like it helps me, like, deflate when I talk to myself.
Okay.
So, and of course therapy, they offer a lot of therapy, and they give us, like little pamphlets and stuff like that, because our mental health also matters, especially in those types of facilities.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Thank you all very much for that, but it affects everybody differently. And kind of my point too is a lot of times when we do work, we talk about compassion fatigue and burnout. Some people think, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and walk away and go find something different. But maybe that doesn't always have to be the answer. And so I have some suggestions that we'll get to in just a minute. But kids really do pick up on, especially those y'all that either have children or you work with children, they pick up when we're in a different mood. They know when we're dysregulated, right? Sometimes I don't even recognize when I'm off, and my 5-year-old will be like, Mommy, what's wrong? And I'm like, what do you mean what's wrong? And she's like, what's wrong? You have a face, like your face looks sad, or your face, she's learned the word stressed lately. So every morning, Mom, I'm so stressed to go to school today. I'm just so stressed that I have to get dressed, and I just want to stay home and watch Bluey, and I don't want to go. She's in daycare, mind you, just in pre-K. She's starting kindergarten. I'm like, oh God, she already knows what stressed is. But at least she's aware, right? So maybe I'm doing something right. Okay, so chronic stress. is ongoing, right? It's a long-term experience of stress, occurs when your body stays in a heightened state of alert for extended periods of time. So kind of like hypervigilance that I talk a lot about with first responders is the chronic stress when our body stays alert, heightened. We're activating our central nervous system. And so this means that our central nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system are constantly activated in alert mode. And it's making our bodies work and process and prepare for a potential threat or danger. We were designed as humans to have that when we're actually in danger or under attack, and we need to have a prepared response. Sometimes we get stuck in that response though, and we have constant adrenaline, endorphins, and epinephrine, all in cortisol getting pushed out to us, and so we essentially become so used to that when we're not in stress response, we think that we're not functioning. We think that we're low, we're tired, we're fatigued, we're low energy, we're not prepared, we're lazy, we're not doing our best, right? We associate negative things. But that might not always be the case. It's just that we kind of can live in these worlds of extreme moderation, like way turned up high or completely off. And so anything in between that feels really uncomfortable because it feels like we're not prepared. Anybody in here experience chronic stress? Yeah. Do you have physical symptoms to your chronic stress in your body that you feel? Yeah, mine's my neck, normally. Pretty chronic neck pain all the time. Anybody else? Where do you feel it in your body? Neck, shoulders, gut? Yeah, absolutely. So what happens when we're in the chronic stress, central nervous system and sympathetic nervous system are constantly on, then our parasympathetic nervous system is not kicking on, right? It doesn't get its opportunity. That's the rest and digest function. That's where our body heals, recovers. It's supposed to kick on like when we're resting and when we're sleeping. So we might notice when we're experiencing burnout, chronic stress, or vicarious trauma, that we start to have different things happening in our bodies, right? We're having aches and pains, we're having weakened immune systems, we're getting sick more frequently than we used to because our body is not able to recover because you're not allowing the parasympathetic nervous system to kick on and do its job. And so we're getting overdoses of these other chemicals and hormones that, while sometimes make us alert, over time we can also become almost immune to them, right? And then we need something else. We need other stimulants. We're upping from 2 cups of coffee to 4 cups of coffee to 6 cups of coffee to multiple energy drinks or whatever we can, BCAAs, creatine, as an upper to be able to function because we don't like feeling the fatigue. All of these things can lead up to us becoming disconnected. If we don't deal with it, if we don't manage it, if we're not aware of it, we eventually become disconnected. We forget to turn off the hypervigilance and turn on the emotions. One of the things that I like to talk to when I work with our cadets, I spend 8 hours with them talking about stress management. It's 8 hours of how hard the job is that you're walking into, all of the challenges you might possibly face while still trying to convince them that they want to do this job. And additionally, that law enforcement is 2 times more likely to die by suicide than to die in the line of duty. Now tell me, how do I get a bunch of 21-year-old young cops to continue to buy in when I sit there and tell them how hard the job is, and also you're more likely to die by suicide because of the challenges of this job than you are to die in the line of duty by an intentional death? That's a problem. And that's why we're having these conversations today, and I'm so grateful for Michelle and all of our partners, the judge and juvenile probation, for allowing me to bring awareness to this, because it's one of those things that we're starting to gain traction within first responder communities with suicide rates, but a lot of the public still isn't aware of it. So, again, we get disconnected. We have difficulty transitioning from home to work and work to home. What happens when you're having a bad day and let's say a family member says something that really ticks you off? Will somebody be willing to tell me, what do? Let's say your spouse or your partner or your sibling says something and it really fires you up.
You go from 0 to 100.
0 to 100, right? Escalated. And then you walk into the office at work, and where are you at? Are you still at 100? Or maybe you came down a little, or you're still fueled up. Do we like to hold on to negative energy? Sometimes we like to, that's problematic, right? Like we like to stew in it. But a lot of times it's almost like a fireball. Like someone just fired at us and we want to pass it. Just like y'all with this beach ball, we're acting like it was going to attack you. Like you're going to catch some cookies from it if you had a public answer a question in front of a bunch of people. Right? We're like, nope, not me, not today. That's also what we do with negative energy. Nope. So then we get into an argument or with somebody at home, we go to work, and then we're already keyed up. And then how ready are we to interact with our community members or the people that we serve when we're already keyed up? Right? Sometimes we pass the puck, and we go give it to somebody else. Projection. We let out our anger on somebody else. Or we have a really hard, crummy day at work. Maybe it was something really bad, really traumatic. You're angry about it. Maybe your boss got on your butt about something. You're really frustrated about that because you didn't feel like you could defend yourself and you had to silence and professionally hold your tongue, which is hard for a lot of us to do. So then you go home, and who does it come out to at home sometimes? Family, friends, the people that love us. And sometimes they get the crappy side of us because our jobs are so difficult and challenging. And is that fair to them? No. Because we're probably all pretty quick to call out those people when they do it to us. Like, hey, don't come at me like that when you had a bad day. That wasn't my fault. Like, I'm home cooking dinner. Go outside, take a breather. Do some 5 senses, grounding meditation. I don't know, bro. I'm not the one that caused the problem. Oftentimes we use work as an escape. We did a presentation last week on grief and trauma. A lot of folks that are experiencing grief, right, passing of a loved one, either personally or professionally, frequently see them return back to work as quick as possible. I myself did that. You want to stay in mission mode because you know mission mode. Mission mode is comfortable. You know what the job is. You know how to get it done. You feel successful. Even if you're withdrawn and isolated from people in the office or at your workspace. What you don't want to deal with is the emotions of the loss or the challenges that you're having at home. So we hide ourselves and pour ourselves into work whenever things are rocky at home, right? Oh, things in the relationship are bad. I'm going to work early. I'm working late. You figure out what you're going to eat for dinner yourself. And we pour ourselves into that. And that just causes more and more disconnection. We also face a lot of challenges. Those in the first responder community, and depending if you are an essential employee, what happens when there's an emergency or a natural disaster? Community and department first. You're at work. Well, everyone else is figuring out what to do with the household and the pets and the kids. And you're on mandatory hours. And you're going out and doing your thing, and you're helping people, and you're going through flood waters and getting people out of their houses and making sure they're okay. What about your stuff? What about your house? What about your family, your kids, your friends, your community? Right? All of that comes first constantly. Phone call, even when you're off duty in first responder world, we might not be in an on-call situation, but if a supervisor calls you back-to-back 2 times, guess what? You're coming in for mandatory hours, right? Ah, crap. Largely it was my day off. Why did they call twice? That means I'm coming in. Better check this voicemail. Right? So we're constantly putting the community and the department first. And then we don't take care of our families in the moments that we can, right? Because they're in it with us. And so we have to remember that by disconnecting from them and not allowing them to be a part of the process with us, is a pretty unfair thing to do, especially if they were with you whenever you joined this type of line of work. So we have to remember to also prioritize them when we can. I like to suggest having boundaries for communication because oftentimes first responders say, yeah, I don't want to traumatize my spouse or my partner or my family, so we're not going to talk to anybody about it. Well, did you ask them if they can handle it? What if they're stronger than you think? They might be. Maybe you can say, do you want the Disney version or do you want the Saul version? Right? Because you might have people who love you and support you that can handle the Saul version and they can go through that with you and you can let out all the hard things that you need to let out in a safe way. Or they might need the Disney version where you just say, right, it was a hard day, it involved a family, it involved kids, it involved whatever the topic may be. And you don't have to go into details, but maybe you explore what you're feeling, emotions, which, let me disarm that word for you, gentlemen. All a feeling or an emotion is, it's a reaction, right? You are biologically designed to have them as a human being. Your brain goes through a process as you experience a stimulus, right? An external event, and then it starts processing how you're supposed to respond to it, and it starts assigning emotions to it. If you don't assign the right emotion to it, it gets misplaced in your memories. So oftentimes, right, that's how trauma impacts us. That's how we relive experiences. We have flashbacks, we have negative, intrusive thoughts, and the such, because it's not stored properly in our brain, okay? So when I say emotions, it's just a reaction that your brain was designed to do. But if we can at least say, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, I'm confused, I felt powerless, helpless. Those are usually the ones that people in this room struggle with, those thoughts, those feelings, right? Because we're doers, we're problem solvers, we're helpers, we care, we love, we're passionate, we have a purpose. And when we can't get the job done or we can't fix something or undo something, we don't sit well with that, do we? Somebody had mentioned denial earlier. I think part of the process is sometimes we can be in denial that the job has impacted us. Right now, not me. You must be talking about lieutenant. Not me. It hasn't impacted me. You must be talking about captain. You must be talking about so-and-so. It wasn't me. Nope. Everything's fine in my world. But then when you start to have those conversations and you peel the layers back, it might not really be fine. But you can get there. You can do some work to get it there. So our stress response cues and personal hot buttons. I like to use these words instead of emotional trigger. I feel like trigger is like the trendy word right now. It's everywhere. Could be a little bit overutilized. So stress response cues and personal hot buttons. Again, it's kind of an external situation, word, action, or memory that elicits a strong emotional response, often tied to past experiences or personal sensitivities. These reactions can manifest as frustration, anxiety, sadness, or anger, and may influence your decision-making, communication, and overall well-being. So I don't know if part of my presentation's cut off at the bottom. They're pretty important things for us to be aware of, both on and off duty. Initially, I started doing some of this work with our hostage negotiation team, or regional team in Fort Wayne County. Do you think it'd be important to know if you're on a scene and you're negotiating with somebody, but then you're triggered, right? You're activated because it's similar to something that you have personally experienced. So maybe if I'm the one doing the talking with John Doe, and this scene is too familiar to my personal history, I need to play a different role on the team, right? I need to know when to step out. Or if I feel like, hey, I can relate to this because I have experienced something and I'm going to use it to my tactical advantage, I need to know also, is my body physiologically responding to that? What stressors am I having? And then to be aware afterwards, that it might bring up some old memories for me. And how am I gonna take care of myself to do that, right? Because if you're not regulated, how well are you de-escalating a situation or a scene? Or connecting with others? Not well, because there's not room or space, because you don't got yourself together. If I can have, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about these. I have a worksheet for everybody to do, if I get some assistance to pass those out. So don't wait to fill them out in just a second. There's a worksheet, and then there's also some resources for first responders and military that's gonna come your way. Okay, so thank y'all so much for your help in handing that out. Y'all can wait a second to get started. So some of the things that might activate us, right? This is more along the lines of at work. Would be a high stakes scenario. Time is maybe running out. There's a lot of pressure. Say we have an active shooter or an active attacker, a hostage situation, and they're trying to like push the time constraints on us. A barricaded subject. Maybe it's a chaotic and overstimulating environment with a lot of loud noises and multiple distractions. One of my symptoms with PTSD and ADHD is getting overstimulated by loud noises and sounds. So like if I were to show up on a scene and there were 8 patrol cars and they all left their sirens on, I would not go into that scene until I got keys to their car and turned off all their sirens, because I would not be able to function. Like it would shut me down or make me so irrationally angry that I couldn't focus on anything else until I could get away from that stimulation to be able to get my mind on task. Responding to difficult situations on the job that you have personally experienced. Working sensitive cases and scenes involving children or continuous trauma. I think for most of us, that's a weak spot as kids, right? They're a vulnerable population, and we want to protect them. And when they get harmed or things are done wrong to them, we all ache, right? That makes everybody angry. Maybe you have unresolved personal trauma that's resurfacing in your situation at work. Sudden escalation or threat of safety, going into fight or flight response, with the increased adrenaline and stress response in the body. Maybe it's observing manipulative or deceptive behaviors. That can be really frustrating to work with, right? When people are lying to you and trying to manipulate you and you're trying to help them. Can't tell you how many times we would get calls for service that dropped as a weapons call. We all ran priority traffic to get there, and then we get there, and there was no weapon. And we find out that parties made it up to dispatchers because they wanted a faster response, because the last time we went out there and it was just a verbal disturbance, we didn't get there fast enough for their liking. So they lie, right? Humans lie, they can be deceptive. That is not all people. Most people are good, and we have to remember that, because it's easy to get stuck in that negative lens with our exposures of things that are bad that happen in the world. Being personally insulted or challenged by confrontational persons. Who here has been insulted on the job? Insulted. Verbal. Yeah. Does anyone want to share how they responded? Good or bad? Good or bad? Does anyone want to share how they responded? They're like, I don't know, my boss is still working. Do you have one?
Initially, when I went to intake, that was kind of like the first meeting with families on situations, new offenses, things like that. So they're kind of in limbo. They don't know what's going on. They received a letter from the department that says, hey, you need to come see us about your child or alleged offense.
paperwork that we're giving them to sign, what exactly it means, what they're obligated to, what they're not obligated to, and that we as a department will continue to walk, we'll go through it with them step by step. So that kind of clears it at the end of the appointment, you know, I'm sorry for how I came in, I'm sorry for what I said, and just let them know, we're prepared for that. And we're here for you and, you know, keep that constant contact with them. So I understand.
Was it hard for you to stay in that role?
At
To
first,
not
I wouldn't
personally,
think it
like,
was.
engage?
At first, but then you also have to put yourself in that perspective too, that we're not exempt from that. I have children. Once they hit 10, I gave them the same spiel as everybody else. You too can be here. And then put yourself in their shoes. And how would I want someone to explain this to me if this happens?
Putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, right?
There.
You're also-
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Oh, I got two, I'm gonna come to you, and then I'm gonna come to you in the back.
Yes, ma'am.
So, mine is a little different, cause sometimes some people are escalated so far until you just can't reel them back. Right, and you know, when you try and they, you know, continue to use profanity and just all kinds of things, you know, I'll say, you know, I'm hearing you, I tried to tell you this, but at this time, and this is a phone conversation, okay? I can no longer accept what you're doing now, so I'm just gonna let you know, I'm going to disconnect now. So I have to remove myself from that situation, because I'm only getting more frustrated, they're not hearing me at that moment.
Right.
And, yeah, so I pretty much disconnect in certain situations, yeah. And then usually what's gonna happen is that individual will call back continuously and leave me a voice message. And at some point, I'll listen to it, and I may or may not, you know, call them back